We are following a developing story. It is now clear who will appear on the ballot in November, but only a small percentage of voters played a role in selecting the candidates in Tuesday's primary.
Our TV6 reporter Katie Hines joins us live to explain why the turnout in Marion County was the lowest it has been in quite some time. Katie?
Todd, Erica, consider this. It costs $1 million to hold an election here in Marion County, regardless of how many people turn out to vote. And yesterday we saw fewer than 8% of registered voters cast a ballot. We found those numbers in other places, too. The Republican nominee for Fisher's very first mayor greets supporters after learning he won the primary Tuesday night. It was likely the most heavily contested local race, but did little to drive turnout. Peggy Cox is one of about 15% of registered voters in the town of Fishers who cast a ballot, and here's why.
Civic duty, and just because it's very important to vote and get out and have your voice be heard.
IUPUI political science professor William Blake tells us Tuesday's numbers are lower than average, but not unusual, especially in a non-presidential election year.
If there's not a lot of information being put out about the candidates, which is often the case, voters simply don't know that there's an election or that much about the candidates who are on the ballot.
And Blake argues that could be on purpose. He says midterm primaries aren't necessarily good for political parties.
Midterms primaries mean that incumbents become vulnerable, or even if they survive a primary challenge, they may have already had to spend significant resources that could be better spent towards the November general election.
That prompted us to pose this question to our political insiders. Do you think the primaries are necessary?
No. I would prefer political parties nominate their own candidates and give the taxpayers a break.
Well, I mean, I think there's a point for political parties to have greater influence than they do. We had reforms before where we took it out of the hands of political conventions, but it appears to me that the voters don't care that much about primaries when they're not showing, so maybe the parties ought to make the decision.
And to give you an idea of turnout in other areas, about 12% of the registered voters in Hamilton County cast a ballot. That number is lower in Johnson County, where just about 9% voted. Reporting live, Katie Hines, RTV6.